Good afternoon. Welcome to the Marathon County Historical Society this afternoon. As part of our continuing genealogy workshop sessions that we try to do every other month or so, except maybe during the summer when we know attendance might really shrink on us. We try to do these every other month. So welcome again this afternoon. This afternoon we have Mike Sydow from the Register of Deeds office here at the Marathon County Courthouse to fill you in about what kind of records and what things they have available at the Register of Deeds office in the courthouse. Because we partner with the Register of Deeds office, we partner with the Public Library and the Palmer Library, so we try to know what people can expect from our different partners. So this afternoon we thought we'd ask Mike to come and fill us in a little bit about what they have and how what they have at the Register of Deeds office can help genealogy folks and the records. So, Mike, thank you very much for coming this afternoon.
Mike for a second, and I'll grab it from there. What I want to do is, well, introduce myself again. I'm Mike Sydow. Gary, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you guys. I brought along, and I'll just hand them out. You guys can kind of pass it back, a fee schedule, so you have an idea of the cost of the products that we have in our office. And it's pretty thick of writing instrument. So just pass it on. Familiarize with a lot of these people. I know many of you come into my office and do searching, so if I, can you hear me okay, or should I grab the mic?
Microphone, please.
Okay, let me use the mic. Okay. So a lot of you are familiar. I've seen many of you in my office, and like I say, my office is our office because it is a county office that's for the people, and the records there are, for the most part, open records, so they're there for you. And I would like to thank many of you who have, for a 10-year period, we were indexing all our vital records, and many of you came down on weeknights and helped do that. So those indexes, which a lot of other county offices don't have available, are available for you when you come into our office to search all by name, and they help you find the vital record by volume and page, so you can go right to it. Sometimes you don't have to do all the searching with the old books where you have to go by alphabetical order to look for that record. So we do have that available to you. The Marathon County started in 1853. Many of you probably searched back that far and realized that. We had the original county was surveyed. There's a grid system, if you're not familiar with the way the county or the whole state has been laid out. We start out with range 26, and it goes 9 rows over, which are ranges, and goes up 4 full ranges. Then there's a short one that makes Marathon County unique. It's got that one town missing in the far northeast or northwest corner. So we have 44 towns, but because we are split with Cronenweder, Weston, Mosinee, and Emmett, they're a little bit bigger than normal towns, so we only have 42 regular towns. Actually, townships are called them. Each town has 36 sections, a normal town. They're all 1 square miles. You break that down into 40s. There's 16 40s in a mile square. So when you're looking for your ancestries and you're in our track index system, you would go to our track book based on where that town is. So let's say you're in town 27 north, range 7 east. That's going to be partly Cronenweder and partly Mosinee, depending on which side of the river you're on. Then you would go to our track book open up to that area, then you look for the section you're in. Hopefully you know that. And that's how you would search by legal description. You break it down by the 40. On the top of the page, it's listed what quarter of what section. And then in there, starting from the very beginning of the first transaction, there's list of names and the type of document that's in there, and that's our track index. That's how you, basically that's how you would start a search for somebody based on the legal description. Now we do have what's called the grantor-grantee books. So there you could search by a name if you had a date that you're looking at. So we have the grantor-grantee books, they go all the way back to the very beginning in addition to the track index. So there's two basic ways to search for real estate for your family histories. When Marathon County started, I'm sure they didn't realize how many records you were going to have. So they started out with volume A. And when they got to Z, they realized, well, that went pretty fast. So now we're starting with they started out with like satisfaction books and mortgage books. And that went not right. So then they started with book 1. And we went up to 526 in just record books or deed books. Then after that, they decided that these big books weren't the right way to keep paper records. So they went into what was called a record book. And if you've been in our office, you notice that we've got multiple types of record storage. There's the big books, which I was talking about. They go from letter A up to 5. I'm saying 526, but it might be a little bit more than that. Then we go into what we call record books. And that record book starts with 1 and goes to 159. And in each one of these books, they're in one cupboard. If you searched, you'd know where the record books are. When we went from record books, we went to microfilm. 1972, we started microfilming. We've got over 600,000 images on microfiche that are in one carousel in our office. So if you look at that carousel holding 600,000 records, and the rest of our books, all of our records, we have 1.669 million records totally in the county, which we're about the 10th biggest county in the state by population, but we're also the largest county in the state geographically. We have more land base than any other county, which makes it difficult for keeping track of all the land records, but the population being down, we don't have the volume of the recordings that some counties do. Well, we're about 10. We fall in that category pretty much population-wise, recording-wise, revenue-wise, which is good for all of us. The vital records, many of you realize that we are now getting digital. All death records are now being digitally stored at the state, or I don't know if you want to call it stored, but that's where the database is located. So we'll no longer have a paper record of the death record. We haven't had birth records for the last 5-6 years. They're digital, and I'm not sure how long, but it's in the works, that the marriage record's going to go away. So we'll be a completely virtual office. We are maintaining, and we just started this, an index. The index that the Marathon County genealogy people helped us to create. We're going to maintain that. So you will still be able to come to our office. You will be able to look for if a person in your search had been born in Marathon County. We will maintain that index and be able to provide you with the volume and page. Well, it's a little different than the way we store it now, but there's a unique number that identifies that record. So you'll know that that record does exist for Marathon County. We won't be able to provide you the record unless you actually purchase it. It's not like in the older records where you can look at it and actually take data off of it. Because we can't, at this point, the state's not allowing anyone access into that index unless you actually purchase the record. So that's the dilemma that we have, you have, and I don't have an answer right now other than what we decided to create that index so that you can at least search and find if that record does exist for our county. Yes, go ahead.
How did, you know, I feel like sometimes we need we need a genealogy group we need genealogy being, lobbying our legislators on this, but how did that come to be that the state decided that these things would not be available to you, to the counties?
Well, there was a national initiative to take records out of counties so that I think we provide a much better service than the state ever did and still does. You can come to us and we can get you that record instantly where you go to the state and you'll wait weeks for it. But nationally, they don't want that record in so many locations. They're trying to consolidate it to one main place to retain that record. And the state's the database center for that record now. So yes, we are the sale agent. We still have that right. We're sort of like a subunit of the state. We're not the actual custodian of the record. So we're working as agents through the state Vital Records Office as a sale point. The record, we tried to have a duplicate set in all county offices. We really did lobby. Well, we worked with the state Vital Records registrar at that time, John, and he just said that it's not going to happen. In order for them to get their money nationally and to comply with their laws, it had to go that way. So, unfortunately, we couldn't retain it. Yes.
So now, if we go down to Madison and go to their office, are the records going to be available right there for us to look up? Or are we still gonna have to purchase it?
I've not gone in there recently to find out if they're maintaining a paper record for the new stuff.
Well, even if they had them on the microfilm, would they be, do you know if they'd be available that way for us to look at?
I'm sorry, I don't know what they have. Has anybody gone down to the state capitol or the Vital Records office? I will definitely try to find out for you how you would obtain that paper or see that paper record for the ones that are now digital. But I'm going to say that they don't keep a paper copy.
Yeah, cause I would think that they would have to have them, even if they were on the microfilm, available for us to look at. I mean, being a.
Oh yeah, if they've got it in microfilm, there's a record there for you to look at.
Yeah.
The new ones are not microfilm. We're not talking about the same media. This is digital, it's not microfilm.
Okay, so those then they won't be able to.
The newer ones are now digital, they're like in cyber world.
Okay.
Well, would
So
those
bits
be
and
on a
pieces.
computer then?
There should be a digital computer version. It's not gonna look like the record you're thinking when you see it in our office on paper. In fact, when you make a copy now, it doesn't even have that background information. It's just all data, and it just puts it out in a. We have the forms, and it just prints it to the. It makes it look like a record. It's.
So they probably wouldn't even have as much information on, it's say, the ones in the 70s or that, so it may not even be that useful to us anymore.
You have to request all of that information. You can get the shorter version or the long version,
Okay,
which doesn't have the parents' names, just has your name, your date of birth,
okay.
and where you were born, and there's two different versions you can get for the birth record. The statistical information if you've been in our office, I'm not sure how all counties do, we have white dots on many books, because there's statistical information that was gathered in certain timeframes, and that information is not supposed to be viewable to anybody except for the client, or we really cover that up when we make the copy too. It's the APGAR statistical stuff, the weight and the length of the child and stuff like that, which I'm not sure why it's confidential, but it's just the law that it is. So that information is what really is being covered up for you when you ask for a copy, or you can't look at the whole book when you're in there. That's the kind of information that's on there. Do you have any other questions? I mean, that,
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that from about 5 years ago, any births that happened during this past 5 years have been digital and not available in a hard copy. Only will be available on we'll be able to look at the index at the courthouse. And the only other thing we can do at the courthouse is, if we wanted to, is we could purchase one of those. Can we do that? Is that what you're saying? We could
right,
purchase,
and we do not
initiate a
have a paper
purchase.
copy.
You would not have a paper. We could initiate either purchase through you or probably directly through the. If we do initiate a purchase through the county, do you get some of that money then, or
Right, yeah.
does the
The
county?
20, it's $20, it's not cheap, and,
Right.
yeah, we see $5 of that. The rest goes to Right from the Start program, child abuse program, and the vital records to maintain the digital indexes and record. Yes,
The books that are on there now, are those all gonna stay, or are they eventually, those will stay?
as far as I know, we do not have to give up any records that we have.
So the ones that don't have the dot, we can still look at those?
Oh, you can still, even the ones with the dots on, if we cover that up, or sometimes if you've got a bunch of them, I've had my staff just make the copy with that covered up and look at it, write down your data that's on there that you want. And to me, it seems more practical than to sit there and hold that while you're writing.
Yeah.
It's like a waste of time. But
So Mike, the new digital death records, are they sort of this, so what have we lost then with the digital death records? So, because in the old days, you know, the presiding doctor, maybe even the funeral home, is
Yeah.
that going to be, or is that?
all the information is on that digital record.
It is.
Yep, the cause of death, the doctor's name. I mean, for sure, insurance purposes and banking purposes, they need to have all that information on that record. So if you if you have the rights to a certified copy, you will get all that information. I know many of you purchased an uncertified genealogy version, or which doesn't have sometimes the cause of death. There's different levels depending on what you have the rights to. But most of you, if you're doing a genealogy search for your family, you'll have a direct and tangible interest, and you'll have that complete record with all that data. You probably are buying more than I see, so but it is available. That as a customer, I mean, that data is still there.
Well, because that was always an important part, you know,
Sure.
maybe giving you clues as to a church or
maybe not necessarily, well, a church where that person may have been buried from, or a cemetery.
Sure, where the interment took place, that's important,
Right.
yeah.
What did you mean when you say, what do you mean when you say we'd have the rights to? Do we have to have some sort of relationship with the deceased?
Well,
In
to
order-
have the certified copy of the record, yes, you have to show direct and tangible interest in that record. Many times when you fill out that form, you'll see it's spouse, child, grandparent, or a direct and tangible interest. So in other words, if you're representing that family in some case where you have a legal interest in that record, you can obtain a certified copy of it.
I see.
That's part. Do you have any questions like on the real estate part, how to find something? I know every office is a little different. Go ahead.
I was wondering, do you know of a way to look up if a house gets sold from one person to another person, but then the house gets moved? Do you know of a way to locate where the house is moved to by the new owners?
If it were moved from the municipality to a different municipality, the city would have a record, you know, the governing agent would know at least when that house was moved off and by who. You might, I'm trying to think, that we don't retain a record of house movings. But the city should have an idea of if it moved around within the city, where it left and where it landed. But once it leaves jurisdictions, I'm not sure how you would, I mean, you'd be jumping all, you know, you'd have to look all over, check with all of them to find out, you know, where this house moved on. You'd know when it left the lot
Yeah.
from the city it left. But then you'd have to go to each town around there to try to find out when it came into place.
I have two houses actually, and one of them we know left, and we know it stayed within the city, and we have an idea what street it stayed on, but we don't know when it moved. And another one, we have an idea of where or when it moved because we have videotape of it being moved, but we know it moved out into the country and we don't know where. So, yeah.
Well, videotape kind of dates you a little bit, so you know it was in the 70s or.
Well, actually, it was 35 millimeters, so, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so we know it was going back.
And then migrated to videotape, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Go
so.
ahead.
I don't necessarily know very much about finding records, like land records. And I heard you say, so just on a basic level, you could just kind of give a little bit of a basics of how to find things. Because every time I've come in a few times and I get a little bit of a hang it and then I don't do it again for a year or two and then I have to learn again. But how, so will you just remind me, because you said hopefully we know the like coordinates or whatever, where that place is located.
The legal description.
The
right?
legal description. So how do we, when we come in the courthouse and we know we know this is the name of them, is there a way for us to search, did you say there's a way for us to search names? Ideally, we know the legal description, but more often than not, I have no idea.
Mhm.
You know, I
Well-
might know where the place is located, but I might not necessarily know the legal description.
Okay, well, our computer system now goes all the way back to, we're gonna go back to 1935 because that is when the social security number started. We have funding to be able to digitally scan every record, and with every record, we're going to have the type of record that it has in the doc number, so it can be located in it, and there's gonna be a little part of that in our track. So you won't have to go to our big old track books to get that record. If you have the name of the individual, you can go into our computer. the computers will go back to, 86. Right now, you'll have a full search, like if you just knew the name, you could type in the name and it'll give you all that information. It'll tell you the deed that they bought that house,
1986, 18,
1980, I'm sorry, not eight, I wish it was 1886, but it's not.
okay.
That's when our grantor grantee computer system started in 1986. We migrated then to a complete track index in 92. So that from 1992, you can come in and you can find anything we have in our office.
Oh,
By
anything that's
name.
happened, you mean since then?
Yeah, by name, by legal description, by PIN number, multiple sources, by doc type.
You mean those are only, like transactions that happened after that date?
Right.
Because if we're like interested in things that happened 100 or more
100 years ago, okay, well then you'd need to know the name. And then you'd go into our grantee or grantee books, and and you'd have to have an idea of a date.
Okay.
If you remember what our old vital records indexes, you had to know the kind of the, maybe a 5 to 10 year period when that individual was born or died. And then you would search that book alphabetically, and there might be from the very first date that book holds all the way to the end in the A's. And obviously the S's and the A's have a lot more names in it than maybe a Z. But that's the way you have to search the old grantor or grantees.
Okay.
You have to have a little bit of an idea where to start, and then it's alphabetical by name. And then you'd search that name, and then that name will give you a geographic location. Then you'd have to go to our track books, and by the section town and range and quarter, you could look, and it would break it down from the very first transaction to the very last. And in many of the very popular areas, like Wausau, you're gonna jump from book to book to book. All those pages are gonna be full, and at the bottom, there's gonna be a little red note that's gonna tell you to go to book and page, the next volume. And then you might go through that page, and you'll see title company people with multiple books open back on our track tables, because they're going from one to the one to the one to get to that very, all the history of one lot.
I see.
There might be multiple pages in books and volumes. But, yes,
I know this isn't our county, but I mean in your county, but our county, but my grandfather in the late 20s owned a farm down by Faribault. Now I know you wouldn't have that here, but if I went to the courthouse down there, I should be able, I know his name, I should be able to hopefully find out exactly where that farm was
yes. If,
through the courthouse. I mean,
in
through
the courthouse, in
registry.
the register of deeds office, they should have that record there. There's probably, I think Jefferson County, Portage County, there's maybe 4 or 5 counties that do not have a track index.
Faribault is in,
Faribault would be in,
not even sure.
Sock.
Yeah, I think it is.
Sauk,
Yeah.
oh, we said Sauk, yeah. I'm looking at them, I can't, Brent, well, you don't care, I mean, I know the register
Yeah.
there, Brent.
But odds are I could find it.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mike, the State Historical Society has the pre-1907 records, pretty much online. Is there any talk about moving some of that up, or is that pretty much that 1907 date for some of those online records through the State Historical Society is pretty much in stone? Are they thinking of, maybe I should ask the State Historical Society or somebody about bringing those records maybe even into the mid, they could do a little bit more with those online records, but I know that they really wanna keep that Vital Records, I think, mostly wants to keep that pretty much to themselves nowadays, the way it sounds, but, you know, I think, you know, they could go for 100 years.
Yeah, and then I think that year changes every year. You know, that 1907, and it goes, should be, I mean, it's 100 years that there's a waiting period.
No, they only have the 1907
I
ones
think it's
online.
still 1907,
Yeah,
it's-
somehow magical
yeah,
1907.
It's 1907 and pre, and all you get is the name and a date, and then it'll tell you what volume and what page they have it in down in Madison.
Okay.
But like your marriage ones, cause it's on the, Wisconsin State Historical Society, wisconsinhistory.org, and you can get your marriage, your death, and your birth there. And, the marriage ones, it'll give you like a possible spouse for it also, but all you pretty much get is your, the date, the county, and then it'll tell you what volume and page it's on. So you still don't get much information off of the online on it.
But even if they would
But-
start bringing that up to date, you know, a little,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not asking for much, but.
I know it'd be nice to have more information on it, but the nice thing is that a lot of times it'll give you the counties, so even if you don't know what county it's in, you can at least find out the county there. So then you can go to that county in your own, you know, and go to the Register of Deeds, and then you can look at the actual records, so that's been really nice and helpful.
Yeah, I know they're always complaining that they don't have staffing. They lose staff all the time and they're getting downsized, so they are not able to get records. That's why they're slow at reproducing records for people. So we always tell people, make sure you come to our courthouse.
There was another question, I think, in here somewhere,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I went to your place and then I found out that my grandfather had 2 birth certificates, and one is in his, my great grandmother's first husband's name, and the other one in my her second husband's name, so I'm wondering if when he was adopted, could there possibly have been another birth certificate made out to hide things, or it was 1908?
Well, good, that was before me. It should have been pulled and actually redacted right out of the record books, so that whenever an adoption occurs, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what side of the fence you're on that, the record does get removed and destroyed, so that there's not 2 records out there. For whatever reason it got missed in your situation, we've found that in other cases. You probably will go through our old indexes, you'll see where the index field has been completely redacted out. Chances are that's because it was an adoption. When adoption occurs, all of the parties that give up the child, for whatever reason, the name of the individual, where the child is actually residing now, could be completely out of anybody's hands to find out where. State maintains that confidentiality. When it occurs, we have to do that, that's by law. If it got missed, which it could have happened, I mean, you know, they might have created that first record, couldn't find the second one, or maybe they spelled it wrong or something, and so it got lost from its place.
So they sent it to the state, and the state said the second birth certificate was the correct one, and they removed the first one. So the person that we think adopted him, that was the birth certificate that is at your place now.
Okay.
So would they have gone back to those same dates then? The dates are,
I really, I don't wanna make any comment, I don't know how that was transferred, you know, what happened on that. If there was a mistake noticed, which one was supposed to be right, and it didn't get caught in the first year, anytime there's a a birth record generated and there's a mistake, the state or the county will fix it in that first year if you bring that mistake to the attention. After a year, then it goes to court to get fixed. And there's a, triggers a fee and a whole bunch of different scenarios to that.
For a last, excuse me, for a last name that has multiple spellings on it, is there any correlation in your records for that? To be able to associate one last name with the other last name?
It doesn't have that intelligence.
It doesn't, okay,
It's whatever you retyped in.
okay.
Hopefully, I mean, we double verified every record that got put in. So but keep in mind, some of those original records, the script that they used to write them, it took 3 or 4 people to try to decipher, is this a F or an S or an R, you know, they were pretty creative in their script, and sometimes it was very difficult. So, not that I'm trying to make an excuse, but the writing was hard on some of them, and it was the best guess.
Okay.
Yes.
Somebody mentioned earlier about having duplicates. They're, like at the State Historical Society, in their microfilm, they have for just copy 25 cents, I can make copies of my great-grandparents' wedding and stuff like that. That happened in Marathon County, and those records are a slightly different format than the ones you have here. So is it still the case, or has it always been the case that the state, that sometimes, I mean, and I'm saying sometimes, but sometimes when a birth or a marriage or a death occurred, that there would be duplicate records in slightly different formats, that one that would go to the state and one would stay with the county? Do you know what I'm asking you? Because they,
now, yes, because we do have some of the handwritten or the typed version, and the state has been constantly digitally making that record, so they may have a digital version and then the paper version. So I'm not sure if you can go down and say, I want the original version. I think so, because the digital version, sometimes there's gaps where there isn't parents' names, where they wanted to just quick get it in, so all they have is the birth date, the county of the birth, and the name of the individual, and the date, I guess. So they don't have anything else. But the paper version would, and you do have a choice sometimes, if you want that paper copy or if you want the digital one.
I see.
So there might be 2 versions there. All of our records that we have, that we make copies of, that are in our office, are the full version. We don't have, no, I shouldn't say that. We do have 2 versions for the death. There's about a 2-year period, and it's the last 2 years where we have an extended version and a short version, where you may not need that cause of death and some of the information on it. So we do have that option.
okay, that's interesting about the more recent stuff, but because some of the older ones, they're down at the state, they're in the Historical Society, they're long, you know, and then the ones that you have are more like rectangular or square, more square.
Should be about 8 by
Right, right.
11.
But so they're slightly different. There must have been a history, I mean, others may know this, but I just didn't know. They must have filled the records out twice, and one went to the state and one stayed here, and,
I think it depends too, because like you're talking about the Historical Society, and their records that they have are actually different than what the Register of Deeds has.
oh, really?
Yeah, because what the Register of Deeds has is more like certified copies of things, and what the Historical Society has is not the certified copies.
Right,
And that's why you can get the stuff for like 25 cents.
right.
Most of what they have is something that maybe someone has looked up and researched, and then they've written it out on their own type of form and put in there in a form that they came up with or something over the years. So it's something more like that than it's, you know, something that the state actually sent over to them or that, so.
Hopefully that's accurate though.
Yes, Gary?
Yeah, most of the time it is, you know, it just may not have all the same type of information on it and that, so.
Mike, can you speak then a little bit, because your question about the adoption, because we get those questions, so then for adoption records of Marathon County, there's really no traceable back to the real birth parents, because once, the child is adopted, then the record of the new parents is established. Is that, so then, for adoption then, pretty much, is that,
You need to get, contact the state, and then you're gonna need to have both of the birth parents. There's a whole list of requirements that you have to comply with to have access to that original record.
but you, that can be obtained, that's good to know that you can obtain that then from the state.
Well, you can try, but chances are, first you're gonna have to get both of the birth parents to sign off and say, we will accept that record. Cause they may not want anybody to know. When they put it up for adoption, they said, we want no, I mean, you see it in TV all the time where, you know, they finally find out who their birth parents are. They didn't want that knowledge known, and some people are creative and deceiving as to how they get that information. But as far as the state's concerned, they're holding that record as very confidential.
But when you go back maybe 2 generations, you know, that, oh, this adoption may have happened in the 1890s or something, and there's really, you know, and somehow you think that my great-grand, you know, I don't know how you tie that together, but you think, well, how can this happened in the back 40s somewhere in a little community and somewhere, and I think, well, you know, how, is there any, maybe there is no recourse for that, maybe those records are just, and I can understand the point about not, you know, revealing, because parents, once they give it up, you know, then that should be it. But I'm sure court records, maybe you're carded through the courts or something, I'm not sure.
I think some church records will show some of those baptismal kinds of things that might very well give you the originals.
You know, if the adoption maybe took place a couple months after the actual birth, there might be a trail there that can be
Oh,
found.
that's a good idea.
But if it occurs, you know, like right after birth, before there's names on the records, then the chances are it's gonna be pretty tough to find that birth parent.
I had, my great-grandpa's, some of his children were, given up to the state, school for abandoned children, and then those the state school at Sparta, those records show who the adoptive parents are. They show who gave them up and who gave, so if any people have children that were went to the abandoned.
Was that an orphanage, or what was that then?
It was like a state,
State orphanage?
yeah, kind of a state orphanage. But those records, they do have the names of the parents who gave them up and the reason why. And then they also have what happened to the children after they left, and if they were adopted, it explains that they were adopted and who the adopted parents are. So that,
I'm sorry, where did you find that at?
it's Sparta, it's a state school for abandoned children.
Okay.
So
Thank
and they came from all over, it wasn't just Sparta, I mean, it was through the state, it was the state school.
Because sometimes in the olden days, if they had some children in tough times, they would say, okay, Sarah, you can go with Uncle Ben
Yeah.
and live there. I don't know what kind of, while we have you, Mike, I'm not sure if you can, but I know that has happened, but I don't know what kind of record there would have been for that kind of,
Your census records or a way to help with that. Those are always, cause that's how I found out in my family, that had happened a lot, is, through the census records, all of a sudden, I started having these other people that showed up in the family notes, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, who the heck is this, you know? And then I started going through and piecing together with the census records and looking at old obituaries for other relatives. I started figuring out, wait a minute, this person here, okay, this one had a kid, and you know, and you start going through, and it takes a lot of piecing together with everything, but I was able to piece together that it was, you know, so-and-so had so many kids, and this one went to work with that one, and lived there for a couple years, so.
Would they necessarily, like if it was somebody that might have been adopted, would they start calling them a son would they call them a son even though they were
In the
adopted?
census record, yeah, even if they weren't adopted, they would call him a son, cause I have one that was called a son, one was called a, farmhand.
Mm-hmm.
One was called a cousin, when really it was, I don't know, like a fifth cousin or something, but,
I see.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of scenarios that you should get information.
Where do you find the wills that were probated like that?
Well, we have no wills in our office, so you'd have to go to probate. Where they go after they've been completed, I don't know.
We have, the Historical Society does have some probate records around the turn of the last century, late 1800s into the early 1900s.
Yeah, about 1921.
Yeah.
I was doing some research for somebody in Sweden, for a person that lived in Mosinee, and I couldn't find the death record in your office down here. And I went down to the library there, and I found an obituary in the newspaper in 1914. And searched high and low and everything, in the office and so on. And the same thing happened for his wife. She died a couple of years later, and she was living in Mosinee.
Did they die in Mosinee or?
Yeah, right.
I don't have an answer for you on that,
What'd you do?
other than. The only thing I was gonna say is they probably passed away in another state or another county, but they were a resident of Mosinee, so that
Well,
the obituary showed up.
the way the obituary was written, I haven't looked at it for 3 years or something. It sounded like so-and-so passed away in his home peacefully, surrounded by his wife and son or
So
something.
maybe he's out back there, I don't know. Never got a record, I don't know what.
Yeah, I couldn't find it at all. And I had somebody else, Carol Barron's, looking at it, and she couldn't find it either.
Mike, you can maybe speak to the arrangement. I know that we have an arrangement with Wood County because a lot of our residents in the western part of the county go to St. Joseph's and die there. We have an arrangement with Wood County because I've seen some death records of people who died in Wood County actually here. So some of those records do, I don't know about Portage County, but we must have some kind of an agreement or with Wood County.
I'm not sure anymore, there might have been, in the past, some type of agreement where, we house the record, or if they're right on the line. There always was, the place of the death got a copy, and the resident got a copy. Now it's only where the death occurred.
Okay, let's change that.
We're right now sending back marriage records where up until 1982, we used to be a resident copy and an occurrence copy. But we're no longer from 82 to present. Only where the occurrence took place will that record be housed. So we just created, we pulled out, I think there was 500 records that were pulled, that were resident copies, not the occurrence copy location. And we made sure that the occurrence county and the resident, we both had a copy, so now they'll be in the right place. That was a statutory thing that we were told we had to comply with, so. Yes.
I don't know, this might be a silly question, but, when you look at early maps, Marathon County seems to take up half of the state.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through, records, land records of those areas that are no longer in Marathon County, would those be with the current county now, or are they still in Marathon County?
When they split up the state, and then they broke up counties, those records, we were, like Marathon County was the house for a lot of different towns and a lot of different counties. When they broke it down, they separated those records. We've got some old unofficial plat books that show the actual amount of area that Marathon County, looked like, and it does entail Portage and Clark and Lincoln. I mean, it's huge. So those records, when they divided up the counties to their new geographic area, they got those records in the right county seats so that they could maintain their title plans.
I know this is off the realm, but who decided way back when how the counties were gonna be split? The state? I mean,
Yeah, I'm really not sure what the division lines were drawn by, and who. I know that it was the 1850 when the county surveyors went through and created these maps, which are incredibly accurate for what they were using and the geography they were going over, and using chains and wood stakes and traversing through all the hills and the swamps. And like I said, the accuracy that they divided the whole county up in is pretty darn good. And we do have those maps in our office too. If you ever, the county fair has a set. We have a set. We have the original. It's like a plat book, but it's of each town in the county. And then there's field notes that the county surveyor has in big books that show the amount of change they went and what they ran into as they're traversing north, south, east, or west. It's really, I worked in the surveyor's office for 13 years, and reading some of that, it's pretty interesting stuff. The swamps and stuff they traversed around, and set meanders and went around this, and still maintain a straight line. It's pretty good.
Can you talk a little bit about how you find out information on family businesses?
Before DFI was created, Department of Financial Institutions, back in the late 90s, we were the house for all corporations, unincorporated and incorporated. So we do maintain those records, and we have business names. So if you want to start a business in this area, and you want it to be unique, which is what a lot of people strive for, you record that business name with us, and then that can't be used in this county. If you do it in multiple counties, then you retain that name of that business in that county also. With the state though, if you're gonna record it as a corporation or unincorporated, then all those records, and I don't have the exact date that they started, they're all housed with them. I'm gonna go back 10 years. if you wanted to search, a family business that's a corporation or incorporated, you would have to call DFI. They also have a website under DFI, dfi.org, I think it is. And all you have to do is plug in the name and it should find that information. And I'm not sure if, I've not done it. But you can get a copy of that record too. I don't know if you have to call them or
Do you-
if they.
Do you just need to know the name of the business, or do you need to know like dates about of
No, I
it,
think
or-
it's the name. You can search
Okay.
a business by name.
Okay.
Any further questions, or?
Yeah.
This would, again, would be another county, but my grandparents used to own in the country, they used to own like a dance hall. That's no longer there. Would there be any, like, history of that somewhere? It's actually in Clark County.
Well,
That's kind of,
the clerk would have when the building permit or when it was actually built.
this would be in the late 20s or something.
Well, there should still be a record of when it was actually created. And possibly if it burned down, there would be a record. But it wouldn't be in the courthouse. It would most likely be at the clerk's, the town clerk, or if it's in a municipality, it'd be at that municipality's.
It was out in country, but I know where it was, but I don't, you know.
Well, like Mike said, I think
Yeah.
the thing to do would maybe try to first stop at the town clerk's office
Yeah.
and get that, and then try to work
Oh,
up.
oh, the town, in a
The
town.
town,
Yeah, the
the
town
town clerk, because they would most likely maybe have some assessment rolls, tax rolls on that piece of property may have been built.
The local unit of government is the place where the building permits are authorized, or like to build something, they always, I shouldn't say always, but most places require some level of approval for building something, so.
Well, would they have something like that back in 1880s, 1890s?
Yes, they-
You know,
They should have those, we have some of those that we store for various towns in Marathon County, so they do go back, tax records, that type of thing, unless they decided, because usually they stored those, and sometimes if the town is really sensitive to that, they didn't throw them out. So, thank you very much, Mike, we appreciate it.
Stop on down and, the records are all available.
Thank you, and thank you again for coming this afternoon. We'll let you know, if you don't give us your email, if you're available for email or address, and we'll be back in touch with you with continuing genealogy workshops that we're trying to do here at the Historical Society, so thank you very much.
Don't forget to turn in your survey.
And your surveys.